question of governing AI, the world stands divided today.
Well, of course, AI is built on the existing infrastructure.
Hello and welcome to Technocracy. I'm Heena Goswami, editorial consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. Artificial intelligence has emerged as one of the most transformative forces of our times, reshaping economies, redefining national security, and challenging established global norms. Yet, despite its profound influence, there remains no unified international agreement on how AI should be built, governed, or regulated. As global power dynamics become increasingly polarized, the urgency of establishing a global framework for AI governance has never been greater. One may ask, why is this urgency intensifying now? Because AI is no longer limited to research institutions or niche industries. It is redefining public life from the way we learn, work, or communicate to how we govern, surveil, and wage war. The benefits of AI are well recognized: improved efficiency, innovation, and access. But the risks are equally significant and unequally distributed. These risks transcend borders, deepen social inequalities, and if unchecked, could erode democratic norms and human rights. One of the most formidable obstacles to AI governance is geopolitical rivalry. The ongoing contest between United States and China is not simply about technological supremacy, but is also a clash of ideologies. On one hand, the US model, anchored by tech giants such as Google and Meta, promotes open innovation, individual freedoms, and private sector dominance. On the other hand, China's state-centric model emphasizes centralized control, social harmony, and national security, reflected in its advancements in facial recognition, citizen surveillance, and AI-driven governance. And yet, it's not just US and China shaping the AI narrative. Europe has stepped in with a distinctly different approach. The European Union's AI Act, finalized in 2024, marks a regulatory milestone. It categorizes AI systems by their risk to fundamental rights and mandates strict oversight for high-risk application. Europe's right-based model, unlike the innovation-first stance of the US or the control-first posture of China, prioritizes fairness, transparency, and human dignity. But even this approach has its limitations, especially when it comes to enforcement beyond European borders. The 2025 Paris AI Action Summit highlighted a significant divergence in global approaches to AI governance. 60 countries, including India, China, France, and Canada, signed a joint declaration emphasizing inclusive, ethical, and sustainable AI development. The declaration focused on principles such as transparency, privacy, safety, and equitable benefits from AI technologies. However, the United States and United Kingdom declined to sign the declaration. US Vice President J.D. Vance expressed concerns that excessive regulation might stifle innovation, warning that stringent rules might kill a transformative industry. The UK cited insufficient clarity on global governance frameworks and national security implications as reasons for not signing. This absence of a unified consensus highlights a critical weakness in the current global discourse. There's no shared agreement on the fundamental values that should guide AI governance. Without these shared norms, we face a fragmented digital landscape where countries build rules at odds with one another. The consequences of this fragmented digital landscape are already playing out. In regions like Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, often excluded from global tech policy making, the impacts of unregulated AI can be profound. According to a 2024 UN Digital Compact briefing, more than 40% of low-income countries currently lack formal AI policy frameworks. This vacuum creates fertile grounds for exploitation. Surveillance tools, banned or paused in many Western democracies, are being exported to fragile political systems without any public oversight. To address this global digital divide, international initiatives are emerging. The United Nations has proposed the creation of a global AI fund designed to assist developing countries in accessing AI technologies, capacity building, and training programs, aiming to democratize AI benefits and reduce exploitation risks. While equity and rights dominate many governance debate, another issue gaining attention is sustainability. The environmental cost of AI is growing. Training large language models require immense computing power, which demand enormous energy and water consumption. These ecological impacts are seldom included in global AI development goals, despite being critical to climate progress. If AI is to become a tool for sustainable development, its carbon and water footprint must be factored into future regulations. Amidst these tensions and gaps, emerging efforts to foster cooperation offer hope. UNESCO's 2021 AI ethics framework was among the first to articulate global principles rooted in human rights and sustainability. In 2024, the OECD updated its AI principles to strengthen commitments to accountability and democratic oversight. The G7's Hiroshima AI process introduced voluntary guidelines for generative AI, calling for transparency, watermarking, and independent testing. India, too, has taken a central role in shaping inclusive governance. At the 2024 Global Partnership on AI Summit in New Delhi, the New Delhi Declaration was adopted, emphasizing responsible AI development rooted in democratic values and human rights. India underscored the importance of ensuring that AI serves humanity and not just markets. Even within the private sector, which often operates ahead of regulation, there's a growing awareness of responsibility. In May 2024, over 100 AI researchers, including voices from OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic, signed a public letter urging international cooperation on safety standards. They called for oversight, not just of outcomes, but also of computational infrastructure powering these systems. Their warning was stark. Without a shared commitment to AI safety, the risk could become existential. The question that lies ahead of us is not whether AI will shape our future or not, but how can we shape AI together? Whether we would allow power asymmetries, fragmented policies, and short-term rivalries to determine its course, or find a common path that allows sustainable, equitable, and innovative development of AI. To help us better understand the complexities of this evolving global landscape, we are joined today by Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kerry is a globally recognized expert on privacy, artificial intelligence, and international data governance. As the NR and NUH Tisch Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Brookings Institution, he leads pivotal projects focused on privacy legislation and AI cooperation. Previously, he served as the General Counsel and Acting Secretary of the US Department of Commerce, where he played a key role in developing policy on technology, trade, and economic security. Today, he continues to write and speak on the global implications of AI, leading the Forum for Cooperation on AI, a groundbreaking initiative that brings together international experts to chart a cooperative path forward.
So, on the question of governing AI, the world stands divided today. If we talk about at the top of the ladder, the countries who are leading in AI development and deployment, US, China, there has been a long-standing rivalry. Do you think that in terms of AI, the world today risks being divided into blocks where some countries depend upon one or the other nation for their tech-related needs, I mean, which controls everything now based on their ideological affiliations or their geopolitical realities? Is it like sort of a new Cold War developing now?
Well, of course, AI is built on the existing infrastructure of the internet, the communications systems, the cloud systems, and all of those. There is an existing split. We do have the phenomenon of a splinter net today, where China and some other countries want to benefit from connectivity, but also want to maintain control. So that certainly affects the shape of AI. But when it comes to AI, there are many initiatives in the world, many groupings, and different directions. Some are understandable. I think faced with disruptions in supply chains, with export controls, with geopolitical concerns, it's understandable that some countries will talk about trying to develop their own models, their own AI technology stack. Some of that is also impractical. Developing chips is a long-term and difficult proposition. Even hyperscaled models are difficult to replicate. But some of that multiplicity is desirable as well. Myself, along with colleagues at the Brookings Institution and Center for European Policy Studies, looked at AI governance and see really the complexity and diversity that's there as a feature and not a bug. It's AI is built on ICT networks, and in some respects reflects the architecture of those networks, a series of hubs and interconnection points, and with a lot of diversity, a lot of redundancy. That is a benefit of networks, and it produces network effects. And there is so much that we have yet to learn about AI. Even the developers, as the UK AI safety report indicated, do not fully understand all of the applications, or indeed, what some of the processing, or some of the capabilities of the systems are. So there is a tremendous amount of work to do to understand that, to create the systems of testing, of monitoring, of standards, and the components that are really needed to govern AI. So we need many different centers of energy. We need parallel processing. We need multiple efforts.
This rivalry or the differing view on how to govern AI, one feature is related to those who are at the top of the game. But there's another division that came to fore during the Paris AI summit that was held this year, in which developing countries like India, along with some European countries like France, advocated for a more sustainable, equitable development of AI, looking at its environmental costs, looking at the effects that it would have on society, and ask for guardrails to be put. And US was completely against this idea, arguing that guardrails on AI at this point would hamper innovation. So, how do you see the diffusion of AI And as you mentioned, that AI is built on an already existing network or the strength of ICT and cloud computing. Do you think that, do you see a future where like some countries might be left behind while there might be other countries that take the leap into a very futuristic society, a tech-enabled future?
Yeah. Um, Look, there are some important questions there. I think a lot wrapped up in that. There is less disagreement that I think meets the eye, and then some of the rhetoric at the Paris summit reflected. I mean, certainly Vice President Vance came in with guns blazing, particularly at the European Union's digital policies. But if you look at sort of the performance of both the first Trump administration and what we've seen so far in the second administration, things like trustworthy AI, like risk assessment, monitoring and testing, have all been part of their policies and practices. So in the first administration, the first Trump administration, there were two executive orders on AI that talked about trustworthy AI, protecting human rights, civil liberties, and safety. And indeed, just this week, the administration changed the name of the U.S. AI Safety Institute, but much of the work will continue what has been in progress. And in implementing the Trump policies, the U.S. Office of Management and Budget put out guidance in February, I think February or March, that very much along the lines of guidance that they did 5 years ago, and that builds on some of what the Biden administration did. So I think, when it comes to practice, when it comes to adoption, deployment of AI, there is a lot of agreement. And in fact, at the Paris summit, President Macron of France, and this was the French view, is we should be talking more about deployment and adoption and less about safety. That was how they came in. Certainly with promoting deployment and adoption in the global majority. And I think that is a huge need, and one where I do think that the geopolitical environment puts some of that in jeopardy, but where I think perhaps enlightened self-interest on the part of U.S. companies, if not the U.S. government, will create imperatives to build out and make AI across the world and to make it available.
How do you yourself envision global governance of AI? And do you think it would be something that relates to development of the technology or its application, its diffusion on a larger level? And I would love if you could share the idea behind your forum, the Forum for Cooperation on Artificial Intelligence.
Certainly. I have for 5 years now, or really a little bit more than 5 years, almost 6 years since the idea was initiated, led a global dialogue with the United States, the European Union, Canada, UK, Japan, Singapore, and Australia, focused on international cooperation on trying to find common ground in approaches to AI. For example, in regulatory alignment, we're not going to have complete convergence, but if we can align on key issues like risk assessment, like standards development and priorities for standards development, and trying to have international standards that can be bridges across differences in regulatory systems, in approaches to law. Then we can achieve some interoperability and alignment. We've had now approaching 30 roundtable dialogues on issues in AI, standards, ethics, regulation, trade, the technology, of course, set some level setting among the discussants, and this has been with officials from all of those governments, along with global experts. And we do see in some of the products of bilateral, multilateral discussions, some of the end products. But I think our view is very much, as I expressed it, that to achieve global governance, to address the question that you raised, we need networked, diversified, distributed, and iterative approaches. Trying to do this in some broadly systematic way is a recipe for failure, and that is because both that it's politically challenging. You need like-minded groups, and some things can happen more quickly in those forums. For example, with the advent of the generative AI models, we went from seeing an issue to the G7 saying, let's have a set of principles to address this, and arriving at agreements with companies, and then the adoption of principles, and now a process of carrying out those principles, the Hiroshima principles of the G7, and the code of conduct that was developed coming out of that. And companies have done reports on what they're doing to assess risk, manage risk in foundational models. And we need to build on that. We need to develop systems of measurement and additional standards. We need to develop further transparency in that area. But all of that builds. That is part of what I described as a distributive and iterative process. And this is impossible to do with an a priori system.
I want to come to the politically challenging part of it. And one political reality that sadly we are facing today is that there's a breakdown of trust in multilateral institutions such as UN, World Bank, and there are several reasons for it. But when we are not able to cooperate on age-old issues like war, terrorism, trade policies, humanitarian crisis, how realistic do you think is it for us to expect that maybe we can somehow sit on the table and talk about global governance of AI?
Yeah, that is what I was alluding to, I think, when I talked about some of the challenges in sort of meeting the needs of the low to moderate income countries. And that is exacerbated by the sort of erosion of the global rules-based system that has accelerated over the past year, and certainly, with the U.S. stepping back from many of its alliances, and I think that may do great damage to those systems and to the support for those needs. It's the product of many things. I think there are, as we have found, many downsides to globalization. Network effects can accelerate the flow of information, can accelerate benefit, but also the damage. We see that in social media effects. We've seen it as well in economic effects. And I think that institutions in the United States have not done enough to and elsewhere to those institutions have not done enough to mitigate those effects over a period of decades, and that's clearly coming home to roost. I talked about the enlightened self-interest, and I think that certainly comes to play in AI. It is uniquely global when you think about the training data, the implications, the development. Most of the technology development and research has been done across disciplines, across institutions, and across borders. Multinational collaborations. So that will certainly be diminished. But I think if as the Trump administration indicated, we are going to close our institutions to Chinese students, for example. A tremendous number of Chinese graduate students have come to this country, have studied, and the majority of them stay. It's the same for India. But if we're going to close off major universities to foreign students, that's going to be at an enormous cost to the United States. I think, and I think U.S. companies certainly understand that, and I think they also need to find not just researchers in networks, but markets. So I think that to some extent they will need to step up, and so I think the work of responding to global needs, if it's not going to come from our government, will need to come from our private sector, will need to come from our other institutions, civil society, across the board.
A little off the script question, if you don't mind. Do you think whether it's the government or the private sector or other institution, the US would have to take a lead in the process of global cooperation?
Yes, I do think that. Much of the important work that has been done in AI governance has come from the United States, certainly not the United States exclusively. India in the presidency of the Global Partnership on AI, of the G20, has been a leader. Japan has been an important leader from the get-go and really initiated some of the multilateral efforts that produced the important work of the OECD in establishing one of the first ethics frameworks for AI, and which both Japan and the OECD in the monitoring under the Hiroshima AI Code of Conduct that I talked about. But the U.S. has been a key player in that as well, as a member of the G7 and in the OECD. And I do look back at the adoption of the OECD AI principles. That was done during the last Trump administration. The U.S. joined the global partnership on AI under the last Trump administration. So as this administration develops its AI action plan, as it's now doing and is expected to come out in the next month or so, I hope that it will continue international engagement that was an element of the first Trump administration's policies. And certainly if the U.S. is truly going to be a leader in AI, it needs to do that.
Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your valuable time. I'm so happy we could have this conversation.
If you enjoyed watching this episode of Technocracy, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more AI-related conversation, you can also watch IGPP Expert Talks AI Special Series.